the world would learn of what we now refer to as the Bimini Road. The stones had evidently lain submerged for a very long time. The edges of the largest blocks had been rounded off, giving them a domed appearance, like great loaves of bread or pillows. Some were absolutely rectangular, while others approached perfect squares. Valentine concluded that the stones of the Bimini Road were the remnants of a megalithic site similar in many ways to Stonehenge. In the ensuing years, Valentine and his colleagues continued their studies at the site and located others in close proximity which seemed to reinforce the importance of Bimini. However, all of these expeditions were basically concerned with the same question. Were the features of the road man-made or a naturally occurring formation of beach rock? Were their origins archaeological or geological? Up until that time, the findings had proved ambiguous and inconclusive. While Valentine and others wrestled with this problem in the field, 1,000 miles away in the American heartland, a professor of English classical literature with a military background and a passion for Atlantean studies was coming to some conclusions of his own. 6 years after his original discovery at Bimini, Dr. J. Manson Valentine, veteran in the race for Atlantis, passed the torch to Dr. David Zink.
10 expeditions out there led me to believe that it was an archaeological site, contrary to establishment opinions. In 1973, I sailed my yacht Mackay II out of Galveston to the Bahamas, and we began working on the project. What we were looking at was a reverse J shape of large rectangular and square stones which weighed up to 12 tons. Initially it looked perhaps like a harbor, but our basic question was coping with the establishment view that it was a natural formation of beach rock.
Zink led a total of 10 expeditions to the road site between 1974 and 1980. Inspired by the works of Plato, Casey, Valentine, and others, he tackled the enigma of the road from every possible angle.
The most sophisticated thing we did was to core the blocks on into the seafloor and do nuclear activation analysis. We found, as a result, that the trace elements were quite different from the blocks and the seafloor, so that obviously it had not been formed in sight.
Due to Dr. Zink's extensive work, the possibility of a sunken megalithic site in Bahamian waters began to gain credence and acceptability in many circles. His findings were published in the book, The Stones of Atlantis. He received many accolades and much interest from organizations such as the New York Explorers Club and the Cousteau Foundation, as well as a great deal of world media and public attention. But the most important result of his work at the site was the discovery of a number of man-made artifacts of unknown origin.
We found a stylized marble head, which in profile suggests an animal. We found a tongue-and-groove building block, evidently cast in a mold. We found 5 artifacts, but no ancient culture that can be documented. Since it related to no known pre-Columbian culture, it must have had something to do with a culture that we don't know anything about. Perhaps Casey was right. It perhaps was an outpost of Atlantis. It is at least 6,000 years old or more, so that takes it back of conventional Mesoamerican sites.
Despite Dr. Zink's tireless, dedicated, and exhaustive efforts at the Bimini Road site, field work languished during the early 1980s due to the inevitable lack of funds and equipment required to take it that one step further. For a number of years, the road, and whatever secrets it still had to offer, was returned to the creatures who had never questioned its meaning or significance, but had simply lived out their lives amidst the timeless, crystal-clear, sunlit beauty of the place. As for human interest, the site became merely a novel side trip for the ever-increasing numbers of vacationing scuba divers visiting the Bimini area. From time to time, sensational but mostly unsubstantiated claims of new discoveries around Bimini surfaced. They ranged from grotto-like caverns carved by mysterious means through the living rock, to strange offshore columns which glowed with a luminous light and emitted radioactivity. For the serious researcher, the daunting task of verifying the facts and debunking the fiction lay ahead. As in any research, there are some skeptics who are firmly opposed to even considering the evidence, and there are some believers who don't seem to need any. The latter was the case with what was alleged by some to be a collection of toppled pillars lying in shallow water a few miles southwest of the road site. They are obviously man-formed, are of uniform size, lie in rows on the seafloor, and appear to consist of material suitable for construction purposes. But the most cursory investigation does not suggest architecture or the fallen pillars of the Atlantean Hall of Records, but some wrecked ship's cargo, probably cement or lime, hardened in the barrels which have long since decayed. As each false lead is followed and discounted, the trail becomes clearer for a new wave of searchers committed to the hunt for Atlantis. Since the mid-80s, various groups have been returning to Bimini to continue the search for remnants of Atlantis. Most active have been the Florida-based Gaia Foundation and California's the Atlantis Organization. For the most part self-financed, their field sessions are short but intensive. Conveniently headquartered at South Bimini's Bimini Reef Club, the expedition members prepare for operations. From all walks of life, their common bond is a passionate belief in the existence of Atlantis. Their team consists of school teachers, scientists, and surveyors.
One of the things which has motivated my life is understanding why things happen. I've always had a deep desire to try to understand matter at a deep level, to understand the laws of physics and the laws of the universe, which motivated me to go into physics in the first place. One of the curious things about Bimini, besides the structures at the Bimini road site underwater, are the mounds, which are seen above ground. They're strange shapes that look from the air like animals or man-made structures. They probably come from a more recent civilization, but they may have been built upon earlier civilizations.
Utilizing infrared photography undertaken by Kentucky land surveyor Raymond Lee, the mound figures become strikingly clear. Their most likely origin is with the Shark and Cat clans of the Yuchi Indians, but it is the more ancient remains and clues that may lie buried beneath them that interest the expedition.